this point before we go further about dating and everything else is why it's actually bad for a population to shrink. I mean, it's basically that the economy relies on the number of people you have to work and so on, right?
Yeah, I mean, to simply put, so decline in population can cause societal structure change because, I mean, if you look at South Korea, they say, so that all the projections suggest that if we go with this flow, so with this scenario, South Korea's population, 40% of the population by mid-century will be 65 and over. And even in Japan, now 30% of the population in Japan are actually 65 and above. So this can cause a lot of societal pressure. Number one, fiscal pressure, because people who need like healthcare system and like pension are increasing, so the demand is increasing. But people who can provide that service is decreasing, so there's a financial burden there. And secondly, there's a lack of workforce, right? So even Japan is seeing like lack of workforce in many sectors like construction and elder care. So these can lead to economic slowdown.
And Simone, you and I were talking about the traditional values, how that may have affected people, especially of our generation, their choice to either get married or not, or to have children or not. Can you just explain what role those traditional values you think played in this whole demographic crisis that we're having now? Was an age something that you were told?
It wasn't so much about age, it was quality of partner was talked about. So there was a lot of, and it was never directly, it was sort of like, oh, so-and-so, oh, he was a bad man, or that relationship. So it was more like, really look for quality of human. But honestly, and I think a lot of women of our generation who are watching can empathize with this, you know, it was very, and then my mother became paralyzed with a cognitive disease when I was 29. Thank you. And so I spent a lot of time caring for both my father's death and that in those peak years of dating. And when I emerged from that process, yeah, I wonder if that could be, I'm just speaking for Singapore specifically.
Adding to that, there's actually statistics, like a survey that Simone just told us about Singaporean point of view. I will talk about Northeast Asian point of view. So there was a survey conducted by Nippon Foundation in Japan, and they asked people who said, I have no plans of getting married in the near future, asked why. And the 40% of the respondents said they prefer to be just single. They just like being single. And 33% said they can't see any benefits out of marriage. And in South Korea, they did a similar, survey in 2022, and majority of them said they haven't saved up enough money to get married. And also, there were answers like unstable unemployment. So there's like all these sorts of social, problems all combined all together, so that they came down to a conclusion that we're just going to make marriage and having birth as an option.
As we've been talking about it, Asian governments have been trying practically everything to try to get young people to start dating and have children. All of them have the intellectual sparring that comes with living in a place like Singapore. But all I can tell you is that's the science of how it works. Like that oxytocin, we need that. And when we're stressed, it decreases.
Do you think like government trying to chip into people's love life is effective? Do you think it's an effective way to think?
I think it's so complex. So one size fits all strategy could serve when they survey, could serve a good chunk, but there are all specific that it had to be the right person in order to be the partner of a potential child for me. And anything less than that right person because of the rigid social norms around marriage was not okay. So the one thing that would change my mind is absolutely still if the right person walked in.
People do say, like young people do say, the most important thing is to find the right person, which is why the government is maybe holding all these like dating events so that they could expand the opportunity for young people to connect.
I can just say also, as someone who all of my friends, and a lot of them happily married, also a lot of divorce conversations that I get in the left ear, but in the right ear, even the most happily married girlfriends, their cognitive load is huge compared to my cognitive load. I have to worry about my mother, but
we have seen initially these, really hasn't been very long, a month or so, that the announcement at least has cooled sentiment.
As we were saying, this is a regional, global issue, isn't it? But there was a recent survey which highlights how affordable houses are across the Asia-Pacific region. So can you just talk us through it?
Yeah, so there's an organization known as the Urban Land Institute. They are basically a non-profit across the world where they did an affordability index on different Asia-Pacific cities. And the findings were that broadly Asia-Pacific cities are completely unaffordable. The logic being that a person would earn a wage, and they would sometimes have to pay 20 times their annual salary in order to afford a house. And
So
it's
for our listeners who can't see, we have the chart on our screen that Abby's just talking about. I mean, the top of the list is Ho Chi Minh City, though.
So we synthesized it as best we could, and we broadly looked at apartments across Asia Pacific. At the top, you can see Ho Chi Minh 25 times is what a person would have to earn 25 times their annual salary in order to